that case, it's about just a little after 9 o'clock, so maybe we'll get going. Welcome, everybody. This is our now quarterly call with Wastewater Operators. We appreciate everybody joining today. A reminder that the call is being recorded, as other calls in the past have been recorded. We make these recordings available on our website as a reference for folks. We're joined by a number of DEP personnel. Again, we think it's important for everybody to be hearing the same thing and, attempting to facilitate the conversation as much as possible. We're joined by Kathy Baskin, our Assistant Commissioner for Water, who also has the technical savvy to set up the Zoom call. Leldon Langley, Mary Beth Chubb, John Murphy, Susy King, as well as a number of representatives of our regional offices. We're also pleased that, as always, on these calls, we are being joined by our colleagues at EPA to make sure that we're sharing the most recent information. And if it's okay, I might ask you, Denny Dart, if you wouldn't mind providing any updates for the benefit of the group.
Thank you, Commissioner. As usual, I'll have some trainings to share, which I will put in the chat. These are offered by EPA, and you can get credit for them and certificates. Great. So that's what I have to offer today. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks. We also are joined by John Murphy from our licensing board. John, are there any updates that you'd like to provide?
Yes, thanks, Commissioner. Just a quick update. We have completed the renewal period for 2020, 2021. So all wastewater operator licenses have been renewed. We're in a new renewal period. So that is going well. Board continues to meet every other month. We've had our February meeting, and our next meeting is scheduled for April. Those are continuing to meet virtually. So there's been no issues there. The ABC exam is continuing to be up and running. We're approving TCH forms. We're starting to see a little bit of a switch back to in-person versus virtual training, but there is a good mix right now of both in-person and virtual. So whatever you're comfortable with, you should be able to find some suitable training. Just some upcoming training programs that are ongoing. The new EPIC MWAT program, the exam prep type courses, are ongoing virtually and have started last month. We also have a MAWIA quarterly meeting that will be virtual March 22nd. And the NOWIA spring meeting is scheduled for May 22nd and 25th in person in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire. So a lot of interesting stuff coming up, as well as the EPA trainings. There's a lot of virtual free EPA trainings coming on cybersecurity and climate resiliency. So lots of opportunity. So keep an eye out. Thanks, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, John. Much appreciated. So now what we'd like to turn to is it's an area that I know everybody's interested in and has lots of questions about. The beginning of the arrival of federal funds to support infrastructure, water and wastewater projects. There's been stuff going on, and there's even more about to go on with EPA's release yesterday of an implementation memo. Really, there are three different activities going on when you think about it. Right now, the DEP IUP intended use plan for 2022 is out for public comment. It is one of the largest we've had in over 2 decades for both water and wastewater projects, and we are enthusiastic about working with the applicants on that. Related to that are the sources of federal funding. First, over $100 million was allocated through the American Rescue Plan Act legislation. As you may recall, a few months ago, almost 6 months ago, the governor proposed an approach for utilizing that money for at least a good portion of that money for water and wastewater types of projects. It went through a legislative process, and earlier this year, the legislature passed $100 million for water and wastewater projects. About 13 of that million of that was earmarked, and DEP is dealing with those communities. Another 87 million has gone to the Clean Water Trust. In addition, we're all expecting the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, sometimes it's known as the BIL Act, also to have be providing us significant sources of funding over the next several years. And so I might ask Maria Pinot, the head of our Clean Water Trust program, to take us through these different avenues of funding, what we know about the federal requirements for them, and a rough timeline for the funding. And you know, her presentation will walk you through that. And then obviously, if there are questions, to the degree we're able to answer them at this point, we will do our best to do so. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Kathy, can you share the presentation, please?
Sure.
Okay, while we get the presentation, oh, there it is. I'm Maria Pinot. I'm the Division Director of the Municipal Services at MassDEP, and I'm responsible for overseeing the State Revolving Fund projects. I work very closely with the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. They manage the funds for the program. Today, I will be providing you a very brief overview of the federal supplemental funding that the State Revolving Fund program is receiving, and specifically the investments that Massachusetts expects from this funding. There are two new sources of funding, the ARPA funds and the BIL funding that the Commissioner explained. I'll start with ARPA. So the Massachusetts legislature appropriated the $100 million to the Clean Water Trust from these funds, and $13 million came with earmarks to specific projects, and the remaining $87 million. The trust, in coordination with MassDEP, intends to use these funds to provide principal forgiveness to lower the cost of construction projects. And the plan is approximately 67 million of these funds will be used to award loan forgiveness for all the construction projects that are proceeding from the 2021 intended use plan. These projects are currently underway, which provides an efficient opportunity for the
thwarted with everything I tried to do.
For the disbursement.
Can I ask
people
folks,
to mute?
I think it may be Mr. Johnson who has his microphone unmuted.
I'm leaving it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Maria. Yep.
Okay, so $67 million of this funding will be provided for construction projects that are proceeding in the 2021 intended use plans. And those projects are currently in construction. So this provides a very timely way to disburse funds as projects are being implemented. The remaining $20 million will be provided again as principal forgiveness for the 2022 intended use plans. And many of these CSO projects are in environmental justice communities, so these communities will benefit from this funding. Next slide, please. This table indicates the details of the projects. There are a total of 52 construction projects across the Commonwealth. These borrowers will receive loan forgiveness ranging from 7.5% to 20% of the project cost. The estimated awards reflect the program's priorities, with higher subsidies provided for PFAS remediation, small systems, and the drinking water in the drinking water program. And as I indicated, a CSO abatement will receive a 15% of principal forgiveness. There is only one project in the 2021 IUP. This subsidy is on top of the additional subsidy that is routinely provided by the trust to disadvantaged communities, and this is based on affordability. Next slide, please. This map provides the geographical distribution of the 2021 construction projects. And as you can see, many communities across the Commonwealth will benefit from the ARPA funding. The bottom table indicates the distribution by region. So all the regions will benefit as well. Next slide, please. So I will provide an overview of the BIL funding. This is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This funding will provide $43 billion in supplemental funding for water infrastructure through the SRF programs. This funding is in addition to the annual capitalization grants that we receive. Massachusetts will receive an additional $1.2 billion in a total for this funding. And the annual capitalization grants are approximately $55 million for clean water and $25 million for drinking water. The funding will be available over the next 5 years, starting this year, with approximately $188 million. This supplemental funding expands the existing program, not only for the capacity for loans, but more importantly, to provide additional subsidies focusing on disadvantaged communities. And next slide, please. The supplemental BIL funding comes in 5 separate grants. There are 3 grants for drinking water SRF. First, a lead service line replacement program grant. Congress requires that 49% of these funds be provided to communities as subsidies. In our case, that would be principal forgiveness. And the remaining 51% will be available for SRF loans. This means that these funds will continue to revolve into the program for years to come, which will greatly continue to expand the program into the future. The second grant is a supplemental grant to expand the base program for all eligible projects. And again, 49% of these funds are required to be provided as subsidies or principal forgiveness. Finally, there is a third supplemental grant for drinking water SRF to address emerging contaminants. And this one specifically focuses on PFAS remediation. And 100% of these funds are required to be provided as subsidies. For clean water SRF, there are 2 supplemental grants. One grant to expand the base program. So these funds will be available for all eligible projects. 49% of those funds are required to be provided as principal forgiveness. The second grant is also an emerging contaminants grant, and these funds, again, 100% are required to be provided as subsidies, and in our case, that is loan forgiveness. Next slide, please. This table lists the estimated figures for Massachusetts, and they are listed by year, and includes also the state match of funds. In total, Massachusetts will receive approximately $1.2 billion to invest in the SRF program projects over the next 5 years. Massachusetts intends to put this funding to work expeditiously starting this year, as Commissioner Suberg indicated, we have an unprecedented draft intended use plan that offers over approximately $1.3 billion in funding for both programs. For clean water SRF alone, $963 million capacity this year. Next slide, please. So I often get asked, how can communities access this funding? And to have access to these funds, participation in the State Revolving Fund program is essential. This process takes approximately 18 months to 2 years from project proposal to having a loan issue to start construction. However, MassDEP and the JAS will work with the communities to meet their project-specific needs. The SRF deadlines are established according to EPA grant requirements and are therefore fairly fixed. It is imperative that the projects are ready to proceed when the application has been filed. The annual project solicitation opens in July each year and closes in mid-August. MassDEP offers financing to all planning projects, but for construction projects, MassDEP evaluates the proposals and ranks the projects using established criteria. The criteria includes the population affected, how effective the project will be in solving an existing problem, and whether the project is needed to achieve compliance with the standards or permit limits, among other requirements. Because the demand is so strong, only projects that appear in the final intended use plan are offered financing. The intended use plans are published at the beginning of each year, and once a project appears in the final IUP, a loan application can be submitted. I would like to point out that a key deadline in this process is the June 30th deadline for local appropriation of the project at town meeting. SRF loan agreements are typically issued before the end of the IUP year. I'm happy to take questions if you have them, or also I have provided my contact information, or my colleagues Nate Keenan at the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. We often meet with communities and offer a one-on-one assistance, so feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Appreciate the overview. This presentation will also be on our website as a resource for everybody. Maybe, and it's continuing to evolve, as Maria noted, a lot of guidance from EPA was just put out yesterday in an implementation memorandum. We're still going through that, and we'll be certain to stay in touch with folks, but maybe we can pause here and see if there are any questions or comments that that folks want to raise.
I don't
Okay.
see any questions.
Okay. Well, once again, this is going to be probably a bunch of discussions as we move forward. I know on behalf of, the Baker-Polito administration and MassDEP in particular, we're committed to moving these funds, moving them expeditiously, working with communities to do the best job we can to get the money into hands for these important infrastructure projects. So we'll stay in touch, and we'll plan on regular updates either through this meeting or many of the other ways in which we communicate with you. So if we don't, and thank you again, Maria, and if we don't have any funding specific questions, we might put the floor, open the floor up to other questions or comments. I don't think we got any pre-written questions in setting this meeting up, but this is a good opportunity if folks want to ask anything.
Commissioner, I have a question that I received in the chat. It's not COVID related, and it's directed at EPA. EPA has noticed a NIPD's general permit for medium-sized treatment facilities. How will DEP, well, I guess it's for DEP, sorry. How will DEP permitting work for those systems who fall under the EPA general permit? And, you know, we do have our NIPD's chief here, Susy King, who just waved her hand, who's ready to answer that.
So if you're not aware, there is a companion state permit out for public notice as well. I can put the link in the chat to find that. So we generally, since MassDEP started issuing separate state permits from EPA, so we're no longer doing the joint permit since summer of 2020. When EPA puts out any permit, we put out a state draft permit as well, and it usually aligns very closely with the EPA permit, which is the case in this case. So the facilities will need to get coverage under both the federal and the state permit, and we can walk folks through individually how that happens. But the process to actually get the coverage is further down the road. That won't be till the end of this calendar year, or maybe early in 2023, because right now we're just at the draft permit stage. But we have issued, like I said, a parallel state draft permit, and would intend to finalize this similar permit as well.
Thanks, Susie. I see another question directed to me in the chat, Commissioner, and I think this is a really great opportunity to remind folks about the sewage notification law and some of the requirements that are coming up. And so the question is related to that. Has DEP finalized the form for submitting the SSO public notification plans? And I believe that we have, but Weldon Langley, who's the Director of Watershed Management at DEP, is on the call today. We do have, and he can answer that question and also remind us of some very important deadlines coming up, starting with May 1st, when the preliminary CSO plan is due. So Weldon, if you want to answer this person's question about specifically about the SSO public notification plan, if it's finalized, the template, but also let's talk about the CSO plan template.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. So the templates for the CSO notification plan and the SSO notification plan are very close to finalization. Those are now being turned into sort of fillable PDFs that people can use and will be posted. I can send out that notice when those are finalized. We are anticipating that in just the next few days. In addition, we have been working on permanent signage templates, and we've been also working on GIS layers that would enable the CSO permittees, along with the boards of health, to identify public access points that are down gradient of CSO outfalls. You'll recall that that is one element that is required in the CSO notification plan that's due by May 1st, is to identify the locations for permanent signs to be located, and that should be done in coordination with boards of health. So there's a number of work products that are going on. In addition, we're reaching out to boards of health to try to educate them as well about the requirements of the statute and the regulations, and hoping to make progress in terms of helping to create a good working relationship between permittees and boards of health in implementing the law. The SSO notification plans are due on July 6th.
In the meantime, if people have questions, they should absolutely feel free to contact Susie, Leldon, or me. I know I've fielded some questions. I know they have. So we want to make sure that everybody is ready for this. It does affect all systems dealing with wastewater. So we want to make sure people know about that.
Kathy,
Yes.
Sorry, thank you for reminding me that there's a question and answer document, which we also hope would, address many of the comments that questions that we've gotten over the course of the trainings and so forth. And so that document is also being finalized, and we anticipate it being posted in the next few days as well.
I see Susie has posted a link to the draft state permit for that she was previously speaking about, the NIPD's general, well, it's not the NIPD's, it's the Massachusetts state general permit for medium-sized treatment facilities. And let's see, I think there is a question here. Yep, another question. Are there any funding opportunities being discussed or available to address operating costs like additional sampling requirements, rising chemical costs, fuel surcharges, or other essential costs relating to maintaining the treatment process at facilities? And I think that's a really great question. And I haven't heard of any, except indirectly. There is a, which we've reviewed before, the low-income assistance program that DHCD is administering. But that really just helps. I think that's a break even for the facilities, and it's more of a benefit to the low-income customers, ratepayers of the facilities. I am not aware of any grant opportunities or assistance for operating costs, unfortunately. Let's see, I don't see any other questions yet. Oh, here's one. Does the commissioner have any updates on the draft report from the PFAS Interagency Task Force?
Yeah, this is the, I think you're talking about the legislative task force convened by Representative Kate Hogan and Senator Julian Sear, that throughout really last fall and winter was broadly considering PFAS issues, and they took testimony from a variety of sources throughout the fall and winter. The task force is led by legislative leaders, but a number of state agencies sat on it and participated in all the hearings. I did. I know our colleagues from public health did, agriculture, a number of other state agencies in the public safety realm also participated. The task force is the staff to the task force has been hard at work writing a draft report, and trying to turn it from a draft into a final. We've been consulted by the authors, that work for Representative Hogan and Senator Sear. They covered a number of issues from, the science of PFAS. They took a deep dive into consumer products. They've also been looking at municipal impacts. They've been looking at our programs. I would expect probably in the next couple of months, I know Representative Hogan, who I was with just last week, is eager to put the report out, but she also wants to make sure that, it's as well documented as possible. So I would expect in the next couple of months, we would see that report. And certainly it will be widely publicized, and we'll also make sure that you all know about it when it's issued.
I see another question has come in. Please verify that to be eligible for any of the ARPA or BIL funding, a community must be on the IUP for this year and the remaining funding years. Marie is on the call, and she can take that.
Yes, to receive financing through the SRFs, community projects have to appear on the final IUP. Starting this year, the draft is posted, and those projects are anticipated to draw from the BIL funds.
And I will note that for the ARPA funds, there was about 13 million that was appropriated that isn't going through the Clean Water Trust, and we're dealing with those communities directly. Whether, you know, I'm hearing there may be another ARPA bill, whether they're going to continue to use that vehicle or use the trust. A lot of the funding through the infrastructure bill is going to the trust, and so yes, you would need to be eligible. You know, you would need to be on the IUP to be eligible for the benefit of those programs. But I will note that, you know, with the distribution of the state ARPA funds, some of it was different, you know, and went on different paths. But by and large, it's going through the trust.
I'll also note that the unlike ARRA, where projects had to be shovel ready in order to be able to gain the benefit of the funding, in this case, the money's coming to the Commonwealth over a period of 5 years. And so if your project wasn't on the IUP this year and it's not ready to be on the IUP next year, you still have the opportunity to do your planning and get your projects teed up for the IUP in future years. So it's, you know, this is, I think, an opportunity for a lot of people to take advantage of the funding. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in through the chat.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I want to thank everybody for taking the time. And again, thank you, Maria, for walking us through all the funding sources. It's going to be a lively area. It's a real opportunity. And we're looking forward to, again, working with the trust, working with the communities. And we'll do our best to make sure that we're sharing information as we get it. I think our calls now are quarterly. So our next one, I won't hazard a guess. I guessed right for the drinking water meeting yesterday, but Kathy, do you know what the date is for our next meeting for this group?
I think it's June 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. In the meantime, we'll update, like I said, Maria's PowerPoint will be on our website. We'll keep information moving, you know, obviously our contacts with Maria and others, we'll make sure that we're staying in touch. But once again, thank you for joining us, and you know, thank you, Kathy, and your team for organizing this session. And I hope everybody has a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.